Well, I want to talk about that in two different ways. First, how do they fit into lean, and then how do they fit into the model? And they fit into lean much more easily than they fit into the business performance model, because you don't typically have physicians being your leaders on your units. We started in 2006 with lean, and the physicians sort of stood in the background and watched it. And then when we moved into some collaborative care, we really needed the hospitalists to be involved, and they were heavily involved in developing a whole new care model, a whole new nursing care model. And we learned through that using the lean terminology wasn't very helpful, but that really PDSA thinking is how scientists are trained. And we called it the scientific method, and we used their expertise in thinking as scientists to improve our processes. And they started to buy into it more and more, and we started to see our physician leaders and our informal leaders start saying, what about this A3 thinking? What about, how do we use a huddle? How do these events come together? And so by the end of collaborative care, we had a group of physicians that were employed in the hospital working heavily with lean. Our specialty physicians were still on the periphery. They came to some events, but they weren't as engaged as our employed physicians. Over time, when they'd been to 2 or 3 or more events, you started to see that engagement rise. And so we had to find ways to compensate independent physicians to participate in those events. And we also had to change our style a little bit about, they can't come for a whole day. They can come for 2 hours here and 2 hours there. How do we get the best use of their time? So we adapted our processes to meet the physicians. As we moved into our management system, I started to see our physician managers, our physician leaders embracing it. So they went through the training, and today you will see on all of the units, you'll see A3s. Some of them are influenced heavily by physicians. Our CAUTI rates, our sepsis rates, our central line rates, those kinds of things they're really involved in. You don't see it as much in areas where we're looking at management. What's really interesting is when you go into our physician leadership office, they have 2 value streams now, and they're managing their value streams through daily management. So there's a medical affairs and there's a medical staff value stream, and they're looking at how peer review happens through medical staff, and they're looking at what does a orientation look like from medical affairs. And so each of them have a value stream with 5 or 6 events planned over the next year. And they also then use the huddle standard work from the business performance system to huddle at least twice a week around that board and talk about problems that are arising every day. What are just do-its we can fix? What do we really need an A3 on? Who can help us with this? So that it's changed how they think. Now, if you look at all the components of the management system, they don't apply. So I wasn't sure I would ever say that, but a stat sheet is really hard for a physician to apply on a daily basis. They may do a stat sheet 2 or 3 times a week with different people in different areas clinically, but they don't do one every day. But they do huddles, and they do have a performance review process. So they've more adopted lean. They've inadvertently adopted the management system. They don't really know that it's any different.